What's up, everybody? Welcome to the RDL show, the Ryan D. Leaf show. Here on a Wednesday, follow us at the RDL show on Twitter and Instagram at the RDL show, and subscribe to the Ryan D. Leaf show on YouTube. Listen via podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. Okay, Amy Dash is going to join us really shortly, like in 5 minutes, to discuss this Supreme Court ruling. But before we get to that, I wanted to address the Carl Nassib news. It broke Monday afternoon after we did our show on Monday, and I was on the golf course and I saw the news come across, and I just couldn't have been happier. I've been waiting for a player to come out publicly, and I knew he would be really well received. I really did. I'm extremely proud of him. It takes a ton of courage. The life he leads is his own, and he's a hell of a football player. And that's what this should be all about. And his point in his message was we shouldn't have to have these kind of announcements. It just should be as well received as anything else when somebody talks about their relationship status or their gender or their sexual and what they are sexually. Raiders and Derek Carr may be the biggest Raider lover there is, right? He loves being a Raider. He loves his teammates. He's all in on everything, and everybody's been so welcoming. I just thought it was a great story, and a lot of people else did, because his jersey on Fanatics became the #1 selling jersey the next day. You don't realize how many people have your back and support you until you live in your truth. Sometimes I've found that to be the case a lot, talking about all my faults and everything like this. And this is a guy talking about who he is as a person, which is exceptional. And I want to talk about this a little bit more, but I want to bring on Amy Dash first to discuss this incredible Supreme Court ruling that came down a couple days ago. Amy, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Well, you sound great.
I'm good. I'm at a park actually with my kids, so I'm glad I sound good out here.
Well, that's good. Well, I want to start with this, and maybe to all our viewers and listeners out there, what it exactly means when the Supreme Court rules on this kind of ruling, and with a substantial dissent by Justice Kavanaugh towards the NCAA in the vocabulary he used.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, it's a limited ruling in the sense of the relief that it grants right away. So meaning the NCAA went to the Supreme Court and asked them to overrule a lower court and say that they don't have to give additional educational benefits, which really was a minor thing. It amounted to maybe a couple $1,000s, some postgraduate internships, vocational schools, things like that, but all limited to education-related benefits. It backfired on the NCAA because the Supreme Court said, not only do you have to give these educational benefits, but we can't rule on all of the other compensation. But like Justice Kavanaugh said, all of the other compensation that you're restricting is probably being restricted illegally. And what the majority did is they set out this test that can be used by future courts when other athletes might try to challenge restraints on other forms of compensation, like name, image, and likeness. And the test basically says that the NCAA has to have a really good reason to restrain any type of compensation for athletes because they are working. They're essentially in providing labor in a free market, and therefore they should be entitled to get the value of their services according to whatever that particular market dictates them to be. And if the NCAA is going to try to step in the way of it, it better have a really good reason that it needs to do so to preserve its own competitiveness in the market, to be able to have consumer demand for its own products, which is the industry of college sports, and that it's doing so in a way that's not overreaching what it would need to do in order to preserve its own competitive advantage.
Amy, what would be a significant reason, like you said, like in the paperwork, Justice Kavanaugh talked about how there needs to be a significant reason. What could what could the NCAA use now as a reason why to diminish compensation for a student athlete?
Well, so traditionally they had said just this broad, vague reason of we need to preserve the tradition of amateurism. But what the court says is there is no evidence, number one, that you even know what amateurism is. You've never clearly defined it. And it actually said that. And we have no idea what it is. And to top that all off, over the years, you've decided to give over and above just mere tuition, and you've given other, academic awards, athletic awards, money for computers, money for books. Every time you've sort of pushed the envelope and given more and more to student athletes, consumer demand has actually risen for college sports. It hasn't diminished. So for you to use the argument that the more you give them economically, the lower the demand from consumers will be to see college sports is just completely an invalid argument. On the other hand, the court recognized there does need to be a distinction between college sports and professional sports, because without it, consumer demand would decrease for the college sports product. So therefore, they said it's probably not likely that athletes should get salaries that are comparable to professional athletes. Otherwise, why would people want to see the college sport versus the professional sport? It would pretty much be the same thing. They're different products in the same market, and so therefore they should have some sort of distinction. So it did give the NCAA a little leeway there to be able to put some restrictions on compensation. But certainly, for example, with name, image, and likeness, trying to get in the way of an athlete profiting off of their own, face, their own name outside of the college sports that they play really has no bearing on how competitive the NCAA is. Also, remember, the NCAA is a monopoly. So the court really didn't see any reason why its competitiveness would be affected at all by restricting compensation, because there's nowhere else for these athletes to go.
Exactly. We're talking with Amy Dash, official legal analyst, CBS Sports Radio, as well as Fox Sports Radio, and Audacity legal insider, two-time Emmy winner. She joins us now talking about the Supreme Court ruling that was laid down on Monday. What does this mean for the student athlete? Is this more around the social media platforms, right? Their ability to monetize themselves off their name, image, and likeness? Does this go back to the University of Central Florida kicker who had a very lucrative YouTube page and was asked to pick one or the other to be eligible or to continue on with his name, image, and likeness monetarily? Is this more about what that can do off the field for these student athletes, men and women?
I think it's really about anything that the NCAA is going to try to restrain in terms of compensation to athletes. It's all fair game now, because now there's a legal test. So if for example, there's a lawsuit right now that has to deal with athletes suing the NCAA over name, image, and likeness and restrictions on that, they would probably win under this test. So that all they do is they go to a different court and they say, look, the Supreme Court has addressed this very issue. And it literally lays out for all the other courts across the country, here's how you should handle this. You should look at the market. You should look at the market conditions. You should look at what is the value of these athletes in that market. What is the NCAA's value and need for competitiveness? What's it trying to take away from the athletes? And does what it's trying to take away from the athletes serve its purpose? Or is it overreaching and trying to get into an area that it has no business being in, because it has no self-interest in doing that? So if they're trying to get in the way of somebody, like you said, marketing themselves in social media, well, how is that helping the NCAA increase consumer demand in its product? And if it's not, then it can't touch that person's ability to market themselves in social media. And I think commonsensically, it wouldn't be able to. So this is such a huge win for the athletes, because it not only, gives them those extra educational benefits, but I think the broader thing here that a lot of people are missing is it lays out this test that really will scare away the NCAA from trying to restrict compensation in every other area, unless it has really, really good reason to do so. And even then, it's probably going to have to go and be subject to a lawsuit and have to defend itself. So unless it wants that liability, it's probably not going to try to touch compensation for student athletes. Or maybe it'll try to, negotiate with a union or ask Congress for help. But right now, the NCAA should be very scared to try to restrict things on its own that have to do with monetary compensation.
Do you think a large contingent of I guess, a super conference may develop from this, where they commission themselves, and the NCAA becomes an afterthought because of what they've tried to do for so long, and no longer really have any relevancy in what they do except for oversight. But if somebody else can handle that, the NCAA may just go away because of some of these decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they don't have really an exemption from Congress under the antitrust laws, then the liability that they would face from trying to put restrictions on athletes might be too much for them to handle. So I think they need to redefine themselves to either be, like you said, a governing body that have to do with things outside of compensation, or they need to have protection granted to them from Congress. But the court did give them a little bit of flexibility and say, listen, even though we said you have to pay extra in educational benefits, the court's giving you the discretion of how to manage that, how to handle it, what limits you can place on that. For example, if part of that is to allow students to have extra internships, you can sort of set the conditions of how they apply for the internships, which places might be eligible. So there is some control there. The NCAA would have to go back to court and ask the court to approve whatever limitations it puts on that are contested by the other side. So again, it becomes litigious, and I think that's something they might want to avoid in the future.
Yeah, they seem to really been shackled with some handcuffs here with this process, which I think is great for the evolution of the sport. There's a concern by a lot of people in the NCAA, in particular, because of course how they fought this. The loss of amateurism, the loss of people think it's going to be the wild, wild west out there. I have a really differing opinion on this. I don't think it's going to be much different. I think it's going to allow for individuals to profit off their a time in their life where they may be the most profitable when it comes to their name, image, and likeness. And everything's going to go on as usual. The best teams are going to be the best teams. The recruiting is not going to be affected like a lot of people think in terms of just dishing out money, because good businessmen aren't going to dish out money to 17 and 18-year-old kids who have never played before. That's not what's made them good businessmen. It's a bad investment until they've actually been on campus and played and produced. So I don't think it's going to be a huge effect. I don't think it's going to be the Wild West out there. And I don't know if it's too outside your purview of what that is, but I think this gently moves forward in anything that has happened over time, and just evolution. People fear change, but change is inevitable.
Yeah, well, I think that two things need to be sorted out. One, the court pointed out that you can't call it amateurism when you're making, when I say you, I mean the member colleges and the NCAA is raking in hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. Amateurism is a farce. It's a commercial enterprise. It's profitable. Everyone else is getting that money to them. The coaches, the president of the NCAA, the universities, they're able to boost enrollments. They're able to get donations from alumni. I mean, there's just so much monetary profit that to pay the athletes nothing and say, well, this is amateurism, obviously that excuse doesn't fly. So what needs to be worked out is, one, is it just going to be that Congress comes in and says, here's how the athletes can profit off their name, image, and likeness. And most of the laws have to do with them doing so separate from the school. So they can't use the school and monetize the school's name, the team name, but they can monetize their own name. So are they just externally allowed to profit, or is there going to have to be some sort of a revenue share system where athletes also are getting a piece of whatever the university is generating off of them and their team? And if that happens, then how does that factor in with the schools that don't make a lot of money, the sports that don't make a lot of money? Is it all pooled and then they have to share with each other? So that's where it would get a little more complicated, and people have been talking about potentially a union to be able to centralize all of that. So I think that's sort of what they need to figure out now. Are the athletes just going to profit off their own name and image and likeness separately, or are they going to get a piece of the pie?
Well, that could be a very interesting conversation, because there is a lot of pie out there. Amy Dash, thank you for taking the time to spend with us and educate us about what all this means. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your day.
Oh, my pleasure, Ryan. Thank you so much for reaching out. You too.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Amy Dash, everybody. You can catch her on Twitter at Amy Dash TV. She works with CBS Sports Radio as well as Fox Radio, and is the Audacity legal analyst when it comes to all of this. She's been very active this offseason. I think it's the second time she's been on our show, of course, commenting on the Deshaun Watson situation a few months back, and now dealing with the NCAA. I'm going to welcome in Sky Guasco, my co-host today on the show. Sky, the question of the day for us, first off, is can the Clippers come back from being down 0-2 to the Suns for a third consecutive time? They've been down 0-2 for the last two series. They found ways to come back. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into that game and that finish here a little bit later. But I welcome you in, first off, to discuss what Amy had to say. I learned a lot more about what it entitled. When she talked about it has given the NCAA a little freedom still to negotiate. I was a little hesitant because I'm like, you know what, the NCAA will find any way, shape, or form to manipulate a situation in their favor. But then she commented on how they would have to be litigated. That's how it would have to go back to. It just wouldn't be at their discretion. Their discretion would be there, but they would then have to have it litigated most likely. And they don't want to spend time in courtrooms through this process. As Mark Emmert today released to universities a kind of blueprint moving forward after July 1st in terms of what name, image, and likeness will look like on campuses. It's going to be an ever-moving organism through this process, but we're here. We're here, student athletes.
In my opinion, this is just long overdue, and the NCAA has fought this as long as they could. This has been a conversation for years and years and years and years, but I think it's been a softer conversation of, some of the students that are in the limelight for the most part, in the public eye at least, are, these kids deserve to be paid because they're bringing so much money to the universities. But it's been swept under the rug for so long just because the immediate yeah, but it's amateur and it's college and that's just not what we do. So it's been decided. Now though, it's caught steam recently, and obviously now it's really, I think it's just the dam has been broken, and now it's just a matter of the flood happening. And I think this is fantastic. And when she brought up the monopoly piece of it, that's big. And I think they're going to try to use that to their advantage, but ultimately,
who's their competition, right?
Yeah,
If they're trying to say that NFL football is going to be their competition, there's a complete divide between it. And they talk about adding money to it, makes them more professional. No, they're never going to let it get to that level. They're not going to be played. They're not going to be paid for playing. That's just ultimately not going to be the case. Their compensation for playing is a scholarship. This is about them profiting off their name, image, and likeness, and what the NCAA has marketed as their product for decades.
And it's almost like that. If I'm the NCAA, and I'm looking at this personally, and you fought this for decades or whatever, but now it's like, okay, well, we got to do something. We're under fire. It almost like you could swing this in your favor, the NCAA's favor, in my opinion, but also still, give back to the student athletes, in that you have certain athletes that are out there. We mentioned a couple last show who are, TikTok superstars these days, or YouTube or local commercials. We talked about a lot of that stuff too. You have those kids who are going to actively do that. They build a brand for themselves via their play or their, charisma online, whatever it is, and they're building their own brand. And I think the NCAA and these schools can benefit off of that as well, just as brand, just as salespeople, right, doing that stuff. So you don't have to worry about them paying them as athletes. It's a different conversation where it's.
Are they going to be able? Do you think the NCAA? Do you think the NCAA is going to allow these student athletes to hire themselves a manager?
I would hope so. Oh, will they allow them to? Allow is tough because it's the NCAA. Should they? Absolutely. And
absolutely.
I do think they will. One thing that was brought up last episode that I've been ruminating on the last 2 days is the quote unquote free agency college kid. If they go something extreme, like we're only playing post-season student athletes in whatever sport, a college football playoff is what we've been talking about. So let's just use that as an example. Your school makes the college football playoff. Now you become eligible for that duration or whatever for the month that you're in there to potentially profit or benefit, then I think it becomes that free agency of skipping schools, because we know who maybe the top 6-8 schools in the country annually are in the college football playoff, and there's a couple wild cards. So that could be tough. But should they? Absolutely. Will they allow? I don't know, because I think once you do that, then it's not just the kid. And I think what the NCAA has gotten away with for so long is that ultimately these are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids and their parents for the most part. And I'm sure some of them have, local in-house financial advisors and decision makers, but a lot of these kids don't. They're just athletes, they're students, they're college kids, and they haven't really had much to stand on. And now if they do, with managers, with any sort of, lawyer back or, management, any formal backing with an entity or individually, I do think that the student now has a lot more power than they've ever had before. And again, I just think it's a matter of time before that starts to crumble.
Yeah, it should be interesting. It was very educational. Amy is very well informed in terms of, because when I see things flash across the screen, I hear antitrust and all these things, I don't quite understand what it is, and it's good to be told and have a good understanding. Again, question of the day: can the Clippers come back from down 0-2 to the Suns for the third consecutive time? We'll get to your
looking good.
we'll get to your questions and answers at the end of the show. But first up, we're going to get into the Carl Nassib talk about changing your life. How do you change your life here on the show? You go and use Sunfair, everybody. I tried it July 3rd of 2020. Personalized, delivered, healthy meals. Go to the sunfair.com, go through the process, enter your information, select Carl Farrow as your sales representative, and then select the Ryan D. Leaf Show on how you heard about it. 10% off your first delivery. This food is delivered right to your door. It's all about the food. Look at that transformation of my body from what it started at July 3rd till now. It's been massive. My waist is a 34 now. I don't remember when I had a waist of 34. That's how long ago it's been. I feel strong. I was working out in the gym this morning, and we were doing something with the dumbbell of 65 pounds, and I weighed in today at 235, and when I started this, I was essentially 298. So that's about 65 pounds, and I just picked up the 65-pound dumbbell, and I held it, and I thought about, I was just walking around carrying a 65-pound dumbbell in body weight. I mean, what it was doing to my joints. And I think a lot of people during the pandemic have, in their self-care, kind of overate or ate the wrong food, comfort food and things like that. What I allowed to do is I just chose to make a choice and eat differently, and Sunfair has been the answer. So go to sunfair.com. If you live in the Phoenix or Los Angeles areas, go right now. Change your life for the better with this plan. All right. Speaking about changing your life, I got into this in the open just a little bit to start the show, Sky, and I'd love to talk to you about this. Carl Nassib, defensive lineman for the Las Vegas Raiders, came out as a gay man on his Instagram story or Instagram page. It just, it was so matter of fact. I don't know if you felt that way when you heard it.
Yep.
He just was like, I am as comfortable as I've ever been in my life. I felt it was necessary. It's time. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. What other people think of him is none of his business. He's going to live his life in his truth and shine a light on it. And then I also loved what he did in terms of donating the money towards the LGBTQ community, the nonprofit there that helps with those suicide rates. Michael Sam was really big in leading this charge when he was drafted as a gay man coming out of the University of Missouri. And it was always controversial. He didn't make the squad. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. You telling me the SEC Defensive Player of the Year isn't good enough to play in the NFL? Social media is awful. Some of the responses from people, of course, hiding behind keyboards and stuff like that, I take none of that seriously at all. What I take seriously is the outpouring of love and respect for what the young man has done. And what he has done is he has made lives better for so many out there, because now they see somebody like him and they can be the exact same way in a public way, and it's not viewed differently. It just brings an absolute smile to my face to see somebody living in their truth and doing what they love and being who they are. I think it's wonderful.
Me too. First of all, I'm gonna give him a clap. I just think it's fantastic. I really think this was the way that he did it. I think was so profound. His message, you're right, was very matter of fact. And one thing that he said on the other side of it, when he donated the $100,000, but he made a comment which I think resonated just as deeply as his announcement, which was just a statistical fact. You know, you lower the chances by 40% of a LGBTQ youth committing suicide, lower that by 40% if just somebody were to talk to them, acknowledge them, give them support, whatever it is, just listen to them. If it's a coach, it's a teammate, a teacher, a classmate, a friend, whatever. And when he said that, I think it started to ruminate in the community of obviously there's multiple sides.
Obviously, it has nothing to do with him. Like zero, he understands that, right?
Yeah. But and we've talked so much on this show, Ryan, about athletes who have intentionally or unintentionally utilized their platform of being professional athletes the wrong way, right? As a distraction, as a disaster, whatever it is. And this is just an excellent way of him being an ally, being supportive, giving people, not only youth who he's standing up for and giving a voice, who don't usually have a voice, but other athletes, other male athletes specifically in the space. And Ryan, I want to get your thoughts on this. You've been in the locker rooms. You've been in the NFL locker rooms and college locker rooms. I played high school ball, but it's just obviously different. I can't say that I guarantee because I don't know. I am very confident because we've heard of dozens of former NFL players after their careers have ended come out after the fact and say, yep, I was gay the entire time and nobody knew about it. I never talked about it, never came up. I had to kind of disguise this. I had to, maybe hang out with women at parties. So I felt uncomfortable, but it was something I needed to do. And they weren't living their truth after their careers end. Then they can come out and they feel more comfortable because they're no longer worried about the repercussions, which is terribly unfortunate. That's even where we're at. But I hope that this opens the door in all sports and really just life in general for just one more step for people to be more comfortable within themselves. He's been in the NFL for a number of years. The difference here between him and Sam is, he didn't make the team, as you just mentioned, unfortunately, which I thought was rigged when it happened. But he wasn't on a roster yet. Nassib's been in the league. He's played for 3 different squads. He has a number of teammates and allies and coaches and players on his resume already who have, been playing with him for 6 years. And I think that's a big difference with him doing this mid-career essentially.
I do too, but like anything in this society, in our country, as we saw when the election happened in November, it is incredibly divided.
Absolutely, 100%.
And so there are going to be, I've been in locker rooms my whole life. There are some very poor choices in terms of things that are said in a locker room. There are. I just feel like in this day and age, there's so much progressiveness to everything that goes on. I feel like it's, when you got the leader of the team and Derek Carr too saying up front, like he's my brother, he's my teammate, we're going to go to battle together. I think people fall in line. There may be a dissenting voice somewhere in the back who has, deals with more of a religious belief and all this stuff, which is nonsense. Maybe. But I don't think, the NFL came right out and, supported him. They had to. If they didn't, it would have been a terrible PR move on their part if they weren't out at the forefront celebrating what he has just done. To your point around the public platform and how he's helping so many because of his voice is something I get to live with every single day too. And I don't ever want to, this is a false equivalency by a long ways because of what he's done and what he's doing. But when people reach out or when I tell my story, somebody knows it's okay, that it's okay to live with this kind of disease. It's okay to come forward and ask for help and things like that. And that's exactly what Carl is doing. And he's just going to get to live his best life, live in the spotlight of his truth, in the sunshine of that, and also play the game he loves so much. All of that can be true, and he's living proof of it, and he's going to do that for a lot of individuals. I mean, it's the toxic masculinity that exists in this country has limited this from happening. When we look at women's sports everywhere, there's many women, many gay women that play in those sports and are very out and open and cherished and celebrated. Not so in men's sports because of that toxic masculinity. It's the man card. There's nothing that's really true about that statement at all. There's no such thing as a man card. I remember when I was in prison, I would ask the question, like to a lot of guys in the class I was TAing for. I was like, what makes you a badass? And a lot of them, talked about the machismo, right? The big tough guy that fights or talks shit or something like that. And I was like, who's a badass? A badass is somebody who's accountable, who stands up and is honest and is there for his kids and pays his rent on time. And so that's a badass. And hey, Carl, you are the absolute most badass man I have ever met.
Love that.
Watching what you did the other day. So really, really happy for him.
I love that. And I am really hoping that there will always be division, unfortunately, with all sorts of topics, but it looks like there's an outpouring of support from the Raiders, John Gruden, upper management, the NFL, but also players all over the league who are not gay have come out and given him support online and things. And I think that's huge because fans of those players who may be homophobic or uncomfortable, whatever, all of a sudden a guy like Saquon Barkley comes out who's got a lot of fans, goes, "Hey man, respect, brother, appreciate you, good luck." That support right there can just really deflate and change some thinking, or at least getting people looking in another direction, which I think is important. So I applaud him.
It doesn't cost you anything. If you think it costs you something to be supportive of another human being and be empathetic for his situation, I mean, there's a real problem that you have if you think that costs you anything in terms of life and marketability or anything like that. So his jersey became the top selling item across the league, according to Fanatics yesterday. Incredibly proud of him. Wish we could have commented on Monday. Happy we were able to talk about it today.
Fantastic.
All right.
Yep.
Non sequitur. Little Athletic Brew, everybody. If you don't want to say something stupid, drink some Athletic Brew when you watch sports, or do something stupid when you watch sports. Drink some Athletic Brew. Brew without compromise. All right. athleticbrewing.com. You can get your non-alcoholic brews right there. Order now, and you'll get 10% off your first delivery of 6-packs delivered to your house. Athletic Brew. Try it now. All right. What we did next is we wanted to dive into the NBA playoffs, right? The Eastern Conference Finals fires up tonight, but last night, the Western Conference Finals, you'll like this guy here, right? He was stumbling into the house, getting ready for bed, and he's just like, I know that game's going on. Let me check ESPN on my phone. The score came up 103-102. Good thing in the NBA these days, what is it, 0.9 seconds can last 11 minutes. So I was able to fumble through all my stuff, get it streaming on my phone, and watch how that game ended. The mindset of Monty Williams to call that play, Devin Booker to be physical enough, and then the toss by Crowder. I mean,
amazing.
If Ayton doesn't slam it home, it may go in itself. That's how great a throw it is. And to have Jeff Van Gundy right on top of everything, knowing that is not goaltending by any stretch. That's a free ball when it's inbounded. It can be above the cylinder. It can almost be in the cylinder, and the guy tips it in for points. And DeAndre Ayton doing a tremendous job. If you watched when he started to make his move, he really held on to Zubek and held him for just enough and then let the pick happen and just enough time where he wasn't able to rise as high as Ayton to go get it and slam it home. What a wonderful win, and maybe the defining factor on the Suns moving forward for a world championship this year.
Man, Ryan, after this is all said and done, we're going to have to review some tape here because you've been calling out Chris Paul and the Suns since before the playoffs. So I want to give you a shout out here really quick because your boys are absolutely on fire. This is, they swept the Nuggets, who have the MVP for the season. They got 2 games now here without Chris Paul. They don't even have Chris Paul yet, and they're playing absolutely phenomenal ball. Now, the Clippers are without Kawhi Leonard as well. 2 things, and a lot of these incredible sports moments at the very end of games or the defining moment are obviously the story of the game, and they should be. But things often get kind of pushed aside or swept under the rug after the fact. 2 things have happened here. So, first of all, they're playing without Chris Paul, which is great that they're able to continue this magnitude. Secondly, unfortunately, Paul George, who has been hit or miss in the playoffs, has been playing well recently, turned it around last series to get him over the top, missed 2 free throws.
Yep.
To basically not ice the game because it would have been a 3-point game. Technically, the Suns could have got the
Wouldn't
ball.
Wouldn't allow for that alley-oop play to happen.
No, it wouldn't have. And technically, they would have had an inbound. No, okay. Get in the weeds here because they didn't have a timeout technically. Okay, so they would have had to inbound quickly and chuck basically a full court, 3-quarter shot to, at best, tie the game and then go to overtime and see what happens if Paul George makes 2 free throws. I'm not a star basketball player by any stretch of the imagination. It blows my mind, Ryan, that professional basketball players of any size, Shaq, Wilt Chamberlain, I don't care who you are, they can't make free throws. It blows my mind. I don't understand.
I don't believe it's so much to that. I don't believe it's so much to that. It's how stress and pressure affect people's bodies. I mean, I could get into games and it just didn't affect me, right? I get on a golf course and I'm actually playing a tournament, like it's a tournament thing, and I'm going up against somebody, and for some reason I just turn into a wreck. So I mean, it's amazing what it can do to your body. It can strict blood vessels and do things like that, and you just are not the same with your extension or anything like that. I mean, that was huge. It was absolutely huge because they could have stolen that game, and it would have been a steal because they did not lead at any point all night long. It would have been an incredible steal for them to go back to LA tied 1-1.
And everybody's been talking about Ben Simmons lately, which we're not going to get into here, but just the kind of the unfortunate self-doubt is ultimately what happened with Ben Simmons. Incredible athlete, and he's unraveled, unfortunately, under pressure. Paul George has done it in the playoffs beforehand, got razzed, and it happened again, giving the Suns an opportunity. And again, the pass from Jay Crowder is being completely kind of overshadowed, and again, rightfully so. But the pass is, in my opinion, way more impressive than the dunk. The ball was already there. He just had, when you're a
7-footer, all you got to do is tap it in.
Exactly.
Yeah,
pass is phenomenal.
It was perfectly executed from every aspect of that play design. That's what it was, and that's what champions do. They execute flawlessly in a time that they need to, and that's why the Suns are where they're at right now. They may get Chris Paul back in Game 3, playing in his own stomping grounds out in LA. We'll see if that goes off or not. But you add Chris Paul to the mix, this series could be over. It could be a clean sweep when it's all said and done. All right. Before we move on, just a little preview for tonight's game. We got the Atlanta Hawks versus the Milwaukee Bucks in Milwaukee. A lot of people think this is just a terrible matchup. Sometimes, things are about matchups, and a lot of people are talking about Milwaukee just walking through this because of the matchup difference. and maybe a clean sweep to the NBA Finals. Your thoughts on that? On what this series is going to look like?
It really all just comes down to if the magic continues. And I hate to say that because it's obviously more than that for the Hawks. But Giannis and company's playing well now. They just, again, knocked off Kevin Durant, Kyrie, and Harden, and got past who everybody just assumed was going to win the championship. The size is the biggest issue. The Hawks don't have the size to compete with the Bucks. So it's really just going to come down to that, I think. And if the Hawks can't outshoot the Bucks, it's probably going to be a 5, maybe a 6-game series. If Trae Young can stay hot through a whole game, he's an incredible player. But he has these waves of just hot and cold, like very, very hot and cold. So if he can sustain the heat throughout the game, I think that they have a chance. But I love my Hawks. I've been rooting for them here since they turned the story on. But I just think the Bucks are going to be too overpowering in an entire series. We'll see what happens. The Bucks are undefeated so far at home in the playoffs. Starts tonight. If the Hawks can't get this one, I think they're in trouble.
Well, that's why they play the games, right? We'll take a look at it.
They've shocked everybody so far, right? I mean, why couldn't they do it?
They've been incredibly good. They've been moving in the right direction. And I love what their head coach has been able to do, taking over that team that started out so poorly to start the season. All right. If you're going to watch that game tonight, or if you're going to watch the Isles and the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight, maybe put a little hot sauce on your food, huh? Maybe some Bomb Banana hot sauce, everybody, all right? Go to seekthespice.com. This is a new hot sauce that is banana-based, not banana-flavored, all right? It gives you 2 options. It gives you more of a mild option, or if you want to get a little spicier, go with the red labeled bottle, a little mooey. Again, seekthespice.com. That's seekthespice.com, all one word, and today you can receive 10% off your first order by using the promo code LEAF. That's LEAF at checkout. Bomb Banana hot sauce, everybody. Try it out. All right, bills are paid. Let's go with our next topic, which was revolving around the Cubs-Dodgers series. And the only reason I'm really talking about this is because the Dodgers lost in San Diego last night. The NL West is really, really tight. My first place Chicago Cubs are coming to town tomorrow night. All right, I am going to all 4 games. So if you're not a huge baseball fan, or in particular a Cubs or Dodgers fan, on Friday you're gonna get a real good rundown, because I'm gonna be at both games tomorrow night.
Yes.
And I'm gonna give you an idea. Kershaw got smoked last night, a couple big home runs there at Petco Park. This division is shaping up to be pretty special, but my Cubs come to town. They are, again, like I said, leading their division, and I'm going to be right on top of it. I'm sitting right behind the dugout. I'm going to be able to whisper in Rizzo's ear about what pitchers he should take or which ones he should swing at. So, yeah. And we'll see what kind of welcome back Jock Peterson gets after winning a World Series there in LA, and now playing pretty darn well for the Chicago Cubs.
I love it. Yeah, your Cubbies are in first place, and the Dodgers, who won the World Series last year in the shortened season, they were in first place to start this season. They started 13. They lost opening day. They went 13-2 after that, and then they had a big slump, losing 15 of 20, and now they're kind of in the middle of the pack. They're 3 games back of my Giants, who are in first place right now. The Dodgers are 3 games better than the Cubs, but the Cubbies are in first place, tied with the Milwaukee Brewers currently. Man, this is a huge series for the National League, period. First of all, 2 almost first place teams. I say almost because the Dodgers are the Dodgers, and they could, if the Giants start slipping, the Padres don't wake up, and the Dodgers crank it up. I mean, the Dodgers can run away with this division. We know that. We still have half a season left. The Cubbies are in first place currently. So this is a big one coming forward, and it's going to be a blast, man. I'm super excited that you're going to these games, and I can't wait to talk.
I missed it.
Talk baseball with you on Friday.
Well, I missed it last year. No fans were allowed, and every year when the Cubs would come to town, I would buy series tickets. I'd get the 4-game series tickets, and I would bring some friends along with me. I got a buddy coming with me tomorrow night. Same on Friday. I just reached out to a bunch of friends of mine and said, hey, I got an extra ticket right on the field pretty much. If you want to come, you're going to have to deal with an obnoxious Cubs fan because I'll be in my Ryan Sandberg throwback jersey or my Chris Bryant jersey. We'll see. That's what you're going to have to put up with. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's an escape. I'm going to eat, shitty food. I'm going to eat some nachos and some hot Dodger dogs, I don't think I can bring an athletic brew in, but I'll probably sip on some soda if I want there as well. Before we get out of here, we're getting out of here a little early today because your man, the big man here, just bought himself a new ride, and he's going to pick it up today.
What kind of ride are we talking about here, Ryan?
Well, first, let me preface this by saying that in all those years when I thought I was hot shit and big time, and I bought like Mercedes and Bentleys and Lexuses and all these things like that, I never took pictures with them. And I'm like, how come I didn't take pictures and have these pictures of me sitting on like these, 100,000, six-figure cars? I just never did. And I can't tell you how much it feels like after going through everything I did to go into a dealership and your credit score be good enough where you get a good price and you wheel and deal with them a little bit and you get a good deal on a car. I'm getting a Kia. I fell in love with Kias. Okay. So when I got out of prison and I didn't have any money, it was my first lease I got. I leased a Kia hybrid Optima because I didn't want to pay a lot of gas here in LA, and it was a relatively low priced lease for 3-year lease. When that was up, I was about to have a kid and I wanted more of a bigger sedan, and they had a sedan called the Kia Cadenza, and it looked just like the S-Class Mercedes with all the same gadgets, everything. But instead of being $110,000, it was, $40,000. And it served me so well for the last 4 years on that lease. I return it today, and Kia has come out with a new SUV, kind of and it's called the Telluride. And it looks really similar to a Range Rover. I mean, really similar to a Range Rover. Mine's going to be all black, blacked out rims. It's going to look like the Batmobile kind of.
Nice.
And I fit in it well. It feels sturdy. It feels big enough to roll around the freeways of LA and feel like I'm protecting my son who's in the back seat in his car seat. And it kind of looks like a Range Rover. And I didn't have to pay $110,000 for it. I had to pay like 38 or something like that. And I'm going to post a picture of it because this might be the most proud I've been about a purchase I've made in my post-prison life. So I said we're going to end the show a little early so I can go purchase that, and that's what we're going to do. But I wanted to comment on a couple things that you wanted to talk about too, and I thought were interesting. First off, the pitcher inspections and the fits. We've been watching the pitchers throw when this happens. Now, it's not the umpire's fault. They've been asked to do this because of suspected foreign substances on balls this year, and that's a big reason why the pitches have. And you heard Fernando Tatis talking about I've seen pitches this year I've never seen before in all my years of playing baseball. But I've kind of got a kick out of watching these pitchers just like strip in front of the umpire and make it a big show. Like, I can't believe you're making me do this. A few rotten apples spoil the bunch, as always is what this said. It puts delays in the game. The game's already slow enough as it is, Major League Baseball. They've tried to speed it up over years, but with like a shot clock, but I've never seen it enforced ever during this process. So your thoughts on the inspections, the time consumption it takes, and whether or not it's warranted because of all the things that people have been talking about in terms of, foreign substances on baseballs this year.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, getting out of here early and having this conversation right now aren't going to blend well. So I'd like to politely ask for an extension on Friday for this conversation.
Yes.
But I'll give you my quick thoughts here. Is it warranted? Yes. Is it warranted to the extent that we've seen in just 2 days of this? No. Any good pitcher, and I'm not saying everybody's innocent or guilty at all, but any good pitcher who is striking out the side or strikes out 4 of 6 or, maybe gives up no hits through 6 innings or something like that is going to be investigated. Now, with where baseball, and I'm going to get into more of this on Friday, I don't have time for it right now, but where baseball has been and where pitching has dominated like we've never seen before, at least since the pitching mound was lowered in 1968, we haven't seen this. It's been hitting. Okay, so baseball truthers like me, old school baseball guys, were like, well, we got to get the pitchers a chance. Okay, made the parks bigger, make the baseballs a little bit tighter. Now we're starting to rub the baseballs a little bit different, and pitchers are dominating. So now we're complaining the other way around. Now we're checking everybody. Now the two you mentioned, right? I got it scrolling across the bottom here for the YouTubers and podcasters. I'll go through this quickly. Jacob deGrom, who is the most dominant pitcher we've ever seen in our lifetime, period, right now, outside of Bob Gibson in the 68. His numbers are unbelievable. I'll cover those on Friday. But he was the first pitcher to get investigated. And he basically shrugged his shoulders like, okay, like I'm really good and it makes sense that you're investigating me, but I'm clean. No problem. Garrett Cole, also dominating. He basically laughed it off. No big deal. Sergio Romo for the A's, he's the one that freaked out, threw his glove on the ground, threw his hat on the ground, stripped his belt off on the field in front of an umpire, and literally pulled his pants to his knees, basically being like, what do you guys want to see? Leave me alone. Max Scherzer for the Nationals essentially did the same thing but kept his pants on against the Phillies last night. They checked him 3 different times, Ryan. Now, the biggest issue is I'm not against playing by the rules, okay? There's so many conversations you can have in baseball because the beauty of baseball is the unwritten rules and the kind of where you can get a niche and pine tar this and, corked bats and blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's so many things people have done over the years. The problem is for the general fan, the person that doesn't like baseball because it's boring and it's slow and it's lame and there's too many rules, this is absolutely killing any momentum that baseball might have had last year with all sorts of fun rules that they tried as an experiment during the COVID-shortened season. They had all sorts of fun stuff. They were like, might as well try it on this 60-game season and we'll keep what sticks. Fans are back into it, I think, right now. People are coming back to the ballpark. You've mentioned, Ryan, you're not the biggest baseball fan, but you're super pumped to go to the Cubs and Dodgers game because it's fun to go to the yard. People are stoked on it now, and I think we've had 2 nights of this. 2. I really think this is going to crush momentum. It takes 15 minutes every single time. They did it 3 times to Max Scherzer, who's going to the Hall of Fame, multiple Cy Young Award winner. I mean, it blows my mind on what these guys are. And again, I'm not saying people are innocent because I've been baseball myself.
You just got to assume that everybody, from what we've seen and heard, everybody's finding an advantage, and everybody's always going to try to find an advantage. We'll get into this more. Right? We'll get into this. Yeah, well, we talked about that. This will be a good conversation on Friday. Hopefully, Jonathan will join us. We'll get into that. We'll talk about the Dodgers-Cubs first game of the series, and we'll talk a little bit more NBA action. Get into whether or not the Clippers can come back from 0-2. All right, we'll see you on Friday at 12:30, sports fans. Thanks for joining us.